And we are live right here from the Creative Travels office at 11E Liberty Plaza, right here in Newark, Delaware. Welcome to Creative Travel Worldwide. We are talking today about some of the best food bucket list trips or things you should do throughout the world on your bucket list walk through the world. I mean, if you guys have had a chance, and if you're listening in live, we want to hear from you about some of the best things you either have eaten on a trip or maybe that you want to still do and you've heard, oh my gosh, I've got to eat this kind of food somewhere in the world. People talk about s'mores in the United States. Obviously, that there's nobody better but on a campsite. But we're going to talk about all kinds of different foods, different things, and things that you should be able to taste and try throughout the world. And what better place than right here in the United States? And, when everybody thinks of New York City, yeah, you think of the big sandwiches, you think of all these different things, but bagels, folks. I don't know what it is about the New York City water, but bagels and pizza seem to be one of the best ever in New York City. And I remember there was a tasting done a while ago from about 5 or 6 different chefs that kind of made a pizza, and all the ingredients were exactly the same, except they brought in water from Chicago, Seattle, LA, New York, and I think Philadelphia was in there. I forget who all the cities were, but New York City won by far across the board. But bagels are the same way, folks. And, there's no thing like having a nice bagel with cream cheese and maybe a little bit of lox on it or whatever it is to taste and to have right there in New York City. So these are the kind of things we're going to talk about today is where are some of the best foods, things that you can do, where you can go to come out and taste some of the best food. So if you are out here and you're listening live, please let us know. And we are going to try. Unfortunately, I'm doing this a little bit differently today, so hopefully you can all hear me fine. I was going to actually try to do this last week. We missed our show last week because I was in Cuba, and I was going to actually try to do our show live from Cuba like this, but finding internet access and getting the Wi-Fi in Cuba, mostly for 30 straight minutes, is really, really difficult. But we had great food there too, so we're going to talk about that. So what we're talking about today is food all over the world that I guess going to taste better in those countries. For example, we talked about bagels in New York, but how about tapas in Barcelona? Now, people, we've had tapas. There's a great one. It's a member of our chamber at the Delaware Small Business Chamber. Ole Tapas has great tapas, and he's got some great things that he does. But having tapas out on the streets in Barcelona or going down like to restaurant, just having like a movable feast of a tapas crawl in Barcelona, Spain, there's nothing like it. I mean, I remember being in Spain, and I'm fortunate that a lot of these things that we're going to talk about, I've done a lot of them. There's a few I haven't, and I'm going to tell you which ones they are. But to walk around in Spain and try the little small plates, that's what tapas is. Every bocaditos is Mexican for what tapas is, and dim sum is what it is in Asia. So all over the world there's these different things. But tapas are small plates of these delectable foods. And having it just in Spain and Barcelona is just unreal. So if you've listened, and if you're listening live and you've had anything and you want to chat with us, please do. Please send me a message and let me know what kind of foods you've had, what your bucket list is on a food. But almost every bucket list, I mean, and I know when I say this next one, people are going to make faces. I know I'm going to hear some grunting here in my office. But, this next one, you have to do it at least once. When they serve it with this little seductive garlic and butter sauce with a little bit of herb flavor on it, yeah, if you don't think about what you're eating, they taste pretty good. I remember as a kid, I used to eat these all the time. And guys, that's escargot in France. And there's that sound I was waiting for here. But, I used to eat them all the time when I was a kid. And you take that little spoon kind of gadget and you hold the shell and you dig out the snail with the escargot with your fork and dip it in that beautiful butter, garlic, and herb sauce. And if they're cooked right, they're not really that rubbery. But escargot in France, I'm curious how many of you that are listening here have had escargot before. It is a delicacy that actually it's all over the place when you're in Europe. And I grew up in Switzerland, so having them in Switzerland and France was a delicacy of sorts. But it is absolutely, just having them in France is better than anywhere else. Take some bread and you mop up that sauce afterwards. Usually get about 10 or 12 on a little plate with these little indentations on it. It's kind of fun. So if any of you have had that, I'd love to hear from you. You have to let me know if any of you have had escargot at any time in your life. So one of the things I have not had yet, it is on my bucket list. I've had it in New York City. I've had it in Hong Kong. But I've not had Peking duck in China. And that is on my bucket list personally, because you get that, first of all, Peking ducks, I don't know if anybody knows this, these ducks have been raised for Peking duck. And it's got this perfectly crisp skin, and it's just got these, normally they'll serve it with like a pancake that's got either a sweet bean sauce or scallions, and they got cucumbers with it. And that Peking duck is just absolutely delicious. And I know I'm not winning any points with any vegan or PETA friends that I may have, but it is just so good to have these things. I had a laugh. I want to take a little tangent. This guy in Baltimore who has a crab restaurant, famous crab restaurant, just put up a billboard in response to the PETA billboard that was out there to try and destroy the crab industry, and he stuck one up in favor of it. And it was really funny how that was, and they are getting to be the talk of the town out there in Baltimore. But anyway, Peking duck in China is absolutely delicious. I do want to try it. On a side note, also in China, and I have a friend of mine that's going to probably, if he listens to this show, will probably write me and say, no, that's boiled food. But Szechuan hot pot in China, the true Szechuan hot pot, and I love hot pot. And that the feeling of having that in China. I'll talk about something else that's similar that I've had, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But to me, it's just the ability to have the Szechuan right there in China is just absolutely delicious. Something that's very similar is hot pot, which I had in Vietnam, and that is very similar to the hot pot, the Szechuan hot pot. But I had the Vietnamese, and it was funny because when I did this, I walked around the streets, and what used to be stores during the day, there's all these stores out there on the streets, and at night the stores would close down, and these people would bring in these little plastic tables and plastic chairs, and all of a sudden these little empty sidewalks became restaurants, and they'd have these little burners on every table, and you'd order your hot pot, and it'd come with, mushrooms and vegetables and seafood and some different kind of, flavors and meats and stuff like that. So, it was always a great opportunity to try and have that wonderful thing. And having it in Vietnam, I've had it all over the place, but it was just so much different, so much better there. So one of the things I have done, and I think is on everybody's bucket list for a food tour, a food trip, is a cooking class in the Tuscany region of Italy. I mean, think about it. Going into Tuscany, Florence, that region, it's such a beautiful region to begin with. Taking a cooking class, learning how to make fresh pasta, and making that, or going to the store first and going to these little markets and picking out all the food that you're going to have and making your fresh lunch. And it's just absolutely delightful in those kind of places. And if you haven't done that yet, call Creative Travel. We'll set it up for you, because we'd be more than happy to get a great trip like that. We've done it for a lot of different people. And to have that cooking class and that experience in Italy is amazing. Now, while you're in Italy, one of the biggest things, obviously, is having gelato in Italy. I mean, come on now. just to walk the streets and having the fresh Italian gelato. What better way to enjoy Italy than just, looking at the ruins and walking down the narrow streets and hold a big fresh gelato from Italy. There's a lot of great gelato places all over the world, but just the fact that you're going to be in Italy where it's all done and just having that is really, really a great thing to do. So another thing that a lot of people want to do in their lifetime and to have as a bucket list food trip. And this one here is unusual because not only can you do this, but you can do it in many different countries. And the three top, I would say, would be either France, Italy, or the United States in California. Okay. And that's tasting wine directly from the barrel. And I remember as a kid going into France, and, as many of you probably know, in Europe back in those days, if you were old enough to ask for it, you're old enough to drink it. We didn't really abuse alcohol for that reason. But I remember walking through these vineyards and walking through these places and trying the wines and trying all these different things straight from the barrel, straight from when they were just being produced before it had a chance to be change the flavor and the bottling and the transportation and everything else that goes along with it. It was just amazing to have that. And to do that in Italy or France or California, I think probably are the three top locations. So we can help you design a trip for that as well. But if you haven't done any of those kind of trips, these are all bucket list food trips that you should be doing. If you're listening in live, we are live every Tuesday, 11 to 11, or excuse me, every Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. Every Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can now listen to us after the fact, wherever you can find it. But we are on Spotify and iHeartRadio now as well, so you can look for us there and listen to all our different shows. But today we're talking about bucket list food trips or food experiences that everybody should do at one point of their life. Now, on a side note to tasting the wine directly from the barrel, one of the things you probably want to do is go to Venice, and there's a place there, a little place called Harry's Bar. And Harry's Bar is known for the Bellini. They were the people that started the original Bellini. And Bellini is it's a peach drink. It's a peach cocktail. It's made with Prosecco. It usually has a white peach puree in it. It's probably one of the most expensive drinks you'll ever have in your life. I think it's about $20 a drink at Harry's in Venice. But it's one of those things to have a drink where it was invented. It's kind of like when I go to New Orleans, I have to go to Brennan's. That's where Bananas Foster. I don't know if a lot of you know this. A few of you now, I've had this, but Bananas Foster was founded in Brennan's restaurant in New Orleans, and having it there for is one of those kind of food dreams, bucket list trips that everybody should try and do and do. Now, I had the opportunity when I was in Singapore to go to Raffles, and they have a long bar, and that's where the Singapore Sling was invented. And I had an opportunity to do that. And that was really kind of a unique experience in itself, being able to go to, hey, this is where this was invented. This is where it started. And having that opportunity to do that. So those are the kind of things. And having it in Bellini, I don't know if everybody knows that when Harry started the bar in 1931, think about that. This bar has been around since 1931. A guy by the name of Giuseppe Cipriani started it. And almost right after he started the bar, after it opened, he started this Bellini drink, the Prosecco and the peach puree, and it's been a hit ever since. And every time I think of a Bellini, I think of a little pancake with stuff in it, but I think that's a whole different word there. But that's a whole different story. Anyway, so those are some of the things that people should be trying. They should be eating. These what we're talking about today are places all over the world to go and to try foods, try eating experiences. And if you're listening in live, I'd like to hear some of yours. Send me a chat. Let me know what yours are. And if you had an opportunity to do anything like that, because that's kind of where we are talking about today. Now,